In this episode, we're talking about perfectionism. How do we work through perfectionism so that we can make progress with our pursuits and ultimately create? Hello, and welcome to the Beautiful Reflections podcast. I'm your host, Katherine Johnson, a certified professional coach, mentor, writer, and speaker. I help professional women gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to pursue their bigger purpose and vision so that they can have fulfillment and thrive in their careers. I believe there is beauty in our voices, beauty in our stories, and beauty in our journeys. There is power in community, connection, and deep, meaningful conversation, which is why me and my guests are here to share our stories, experiences, lessons, and learning to inspire you as you walk the path and step into your next level. We go deep, sharing beautiful reflections of what this personal growth journey looks like in real, living color. This journey of pursuing our purpose and vision as we continue to evolve. It is my mission to empower you to believe in your power, to embrace your own uniqueness, and to be the best version of you. I want to see you thrive purposefully. Now on to the episode for today. Hello, and welcome to the Beautiful Reflections podcast. I'm your host, Katherine Johnson. In today's episode, we're talking about perfectionism. How do we recognize perfectionism? How does it show up on our journeys? And how does it get in our way when we're putting our unique gifts and contributions out into the world? I invited my guest, Joy Spencer, to share her expertise. Joy is a coach, speaker, and organizational development consultant working with professionals and leaders at all levels within organizations. She has a unique coaching philosophy and approach that she uses to help professionals use their gifts to create beautiful things and experiences they can offer in service. Listen in as Joy shares her insights, experiences, and perspective on working through perfectionism and what it means to create. Hello, Joy. Welcome to the Beautiful Reflections podcast.
Hi, Katherine. Thanks for having me.
Super excited to have you here today. Today, we're talking about perfectionism, and we're talking about how do we really work through it? How do we recognize it so that we can continue to show up and really put our unique gifts and contributions out in the world? And I thought you would be the perfect person to have to talk about this with me today because you have a very different perspective on how to create, and you have a very specific strategy reframe to create that I thought would be very beneficial to the listeners. And I know that it's proven to be powerful in my life, just the little things I've learned about it. And I'm curious to see how it's worked for you in your life with the new things that you're creating, your podcast, your new programs, and all the things that you're doing based on this strategy that you have.
I'm looking forward to sharing.
Okay, great. So let's jump right in. I know many people aren't really quick to admit something like, they're a perfectionist or something like that. But do you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Maybe it's a perfectionist in me, but I'm going to deny the charges. I have some challenges in the area, and I'm working through it. I'm recovering. But yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm the same way. When I say perfectionism, I'm really talking about like my A++ tendencies, like my tendency to always do things like way above and beyond. Typically when most people would stop and say, that's good enough, I would be the person that's like, okay, wait, no, I have to keep tweaking and modifying and editing like it has to be perfect. So when I say like my A++ tendencies, that's really what I'm talking about, like when it comes to like perfectionism.
Yeah. So I guess based on that, I'll admit, I'll admit defeat. But it's tough though. It's tough though. Even as a perfectionist, you don't want to be seen as a perfectionist because it's a negative, and it's a lot of challenge that you have to work through and process through. But I think my moment of recognizing that I was a perfectionist, it sort of came, I guess, suddenly. I was sort of shocked and surprised. It was when I was in college, and I remember it might have been my junior year. I was an econ major, and I had just taken a test or just gotten the results of a test, and I got a B or something, or B+. It was like a good grade. But I remember crying and just sort of like bawling as I was, going back to the dorm because I was like, I need to get the A's. I need to, this is my life, right? Like I'm in college, like, this is my whole future. I must get A's. Otherwise my life is going to be a failure. Little did I know how little grades matter in the real world. But I still remember this moment. I can see where I was. And it was sort of like a voice was in my head, just sort of saying, Joy, you're not your grades. And then it was like, say it out loud. And I could not get those words out of my mouth. I was like choking on the words. I am not I couldn't say it. And that just alerted me. I was like, oh, wow, girl, you have a problem. Like, this is a problem that first of all, you're bawling over a B. And then you can't even say this and intellectually, I knew it was true statement. You are not your grades. Like, we're not our grades. We're not our performance. We're not the things that we do. These are things that we contribute to the world. But to not be able to say it alerted me to the fact that I was building my identity on something very unstable and very, just like not real. And so that moment, and I know a lot of other moments after that have just been different moments of, that signal to me that this is something I'm still working through, still processing through. And a lot of us are probably still working through and processing through. But just to have that stark example, I always remember I'm like, girl, you were tripping. And but
Absolutely.
It's powerful. It's powerful.
Yes, it is. And I'm sure many people can relate with that, not just in grades, but, even like in the workplace, in the things that they're trying to create, or maybe the things they're trying to do differently in their life, recognizing that they're, when they do things, they may not even recognize that they do something well, like they do good at it, right? Because they have this higher expectation. Like you said, a B, that's pretty good. But, you're beating yourself up because it's like, okay, I want the A, got to get the A. But not being able to even recognize that, that was still great work. And I think that's a great story that just illustrates how it shows up, how it may show up in different areas of your life, and also just your awareness around being able to recognize how it shows up.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes down to our identity and what we're building our identities on. And someone who is a perfectionist or in that area has built their identity not on inherent things about themselves, their inherent value as a person, but about things external to yourself and ways in which we perform. And that's always a very dangerous thing to do.
Yes, absolutely. So what are some of the other, woes of perfectionism that you would say, like how does it get in your way? How does it stop you when whether you're trying to create or do something new, whether you're really just looking for more consistency in the things that you are doing, or maybe you're really just in a space of you're ready for a big change, but you find that this is something that's kind of showing up and maybe the underlying thing beneath why you're not able to really make progress.
It really can stop, and I've seen it do this for me as well. It really can stop you from being able to serve, from being able to make a small but yet important contribution, because you discount things that you consider to be small, insignificant, or imperfect. And it can seem like it's humble, but it really is. We're being a little full of our egos and vain, because it's not about serving other people. It's not about giving them something that, could be helpful and useful to them. We're focused on us. We're focused on ourselves. We're focused on how we're being perceived and how we'll be judged. And that's where all the focus is. And the way to get out of it, hopefully, is sort of like realizing that we need to stop comparing ourselves to other people who we think are doing the big things, doing the things that are really important and admirable, however we define it. And sort of just, stay more in our lane and focus on, I want to be of service. I have something to offer. I know that because everybody has something to offer, and I'm just going to focus on doing that. But when you're being a perfectionist, it gets you out into stuff that's none of your business and really prevents you from being able to serve other people. And I think that that's the tragedy of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I know I can think of even, experiences that I've had, like in my own life, like when I'm creating, when I'm doing something new and different, and I can see like the perfectionism coming up because I find myself spinning, really spinning and going over and over again. And you're right, in this space of really thinking about yourself. In the process, you're losing ultimately what you're hoping to accomplish. You're losing the value that you're hoping to give, by not getting it out there, by not making it available so other people can find it supporting and encouraging and empowering in their lives. So I love that you brought that up. Like, really it's, it's not the I factor, it's more so about like the gift that you're giving and how it's going to support others and serve others.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tricky. People can trick themselves into thinking, no, because I want this to be perfect for others. That's why I'm up till midnight tweaking this, tiny insignificant point. But if you're really, really, really honest, Is it really about them? I mean, because how many of us are really doing like brain surgery? Like, if a brain surgeon is a perfectionist, yes, I'm down with that. Go ahead, be a perfectionist all you want. But if you're doing some other things that are not life and death, and you really have to ask yourself, why am I being so extra about this? Is it really about them and serving them, or is it about me and this just this vanity thing and how I want to be perceived in ways in which I'm not giving myself the care and love and honor that only I can give to myself so that I don't need that external validation in the same way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you think it comes from? Like, I know for myself, I can recognize places in my life where I think it started to show up, just always wanting things to be perfect, and maybe even putting up an aura of perfection, like not really showing vulnerability and having others believe that I have things so together, so much so where it's like I'm really just putting on a facade or putting on a mask because I don't want people to see the imperfections, and I recognize some my own experiences in childhood and things like that that may have contributed. But what's your viewpoint on, like, where it comes from? Where does it start? And why it gets so becomes such a big part of us?
I think it's different for each person, maybe the story behind it, but I think the root often comes to a way to control anxiety and to control the seemingly uncontrollable things in life. And it can start early. It could be something that as you're a kid, it's put on you, or you learn it as a child because, whether or not there's chaos in the home or family, that might be a way to sort of like get some sense of order and control. Or even if not, if that's just sort of like the way that we do things here, this is sort of like what we learn and how we've grown up and been trained. It comes from different things. But I think the point of it is that controlling anxiety, controlling a sense of uncertainty in the world. And this is a way that human beings can feel like, the world is not so uncontrollable. It's not so uncertain. I've got some power. I've got some control. I got this. I can perfect this. I can bend life to my will. And it's tough to sort of accept that that's not really how life works, and that you can't control everything, and everything isn't perfect, and there's a lot that's beyond your control. And so, yeah, I think it comes from that desire to control the uncontrollable.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about it, like, coming from a desire to control and things like that. So, we recognize it now. We understand a little bit where it comes from. But what type of mindset, like, is really necessary? We talked about like the not comparing and things like that. But what type of mindset do we have to really begin to have in order to really work through this? And what are some of the things we need to tell ourselves, and some of the things we need to do as we look to really work through something like perfectionism?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up mindset, because it is about that. It's about having a completely different orientation to how you interact with the world and how you interact with things. And that's why I love reframes. And that's why I call myself the reframe specialist. And that's what I work with and do with my clients. And that's what Reframe to Create is all about as well. This idea of like, how do we reorient ourselves and how we see and view and perceive work and what it means in creating. And so for something like perfectionism, which gets in the way of us being able to create and put out things into the world and put out our service, it's about what is at the I like to think about like, what is at the center, really? What is at the center of your life? What's most important? And bringing those things more to the forefront. And then sort of not that you completely dispel of other things, not that excellence and doing things well sort of like moves to the back, but that's not the first thing that you look at and that you think of. It's like, what else is important and that I want to bring to the forefront? And one of the moments that I remember having this sort of like light bulb experience was when, so our family, my family's originally from Sierra Leone, and I grew up in Nigeria. And when I came to the States, I had never lived in Sierra Leone for like a long extended period of time. I'd always just gone home on vacation. So after grad school, I'm like, I'm going to go back to Sierra Leone. I'm going to move back. I'm going to work there. I'm going to, do my thing. And so this is after years of already having worked in the US and picked up the American attitude towards work, which is like, work is everything. Work is the center. Like, work is how you do how your identity is structured. Well, at least East Coast US anyway. So I moved back to Sierra Leone after grad school, and I was teaching in kindergarten, first grade. And I remember I had like my friends. And so there was like one day, one of my friends was like, okay, I think it was like a Wednesday night or a Thursday night. And she was like, okay, well, we're going to go out, here we're going to hang out. And it was like a pretty late activity, probably like we weren't going to get started till like 10, 11, because that's how we do. And I was like, oh no, I can't. It's a school night. I have to work tomorrow, get up early. And she was like, and so do we. Everybody's working. And just the way that she she said it to me, I was just kind of like, I was confused. I'm like, okay. Because for her, it was just like, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, you're saying that you have work, like you think it's something unique and something special and that should mean something. Now, if I said that in the States, if I was like, oh no, I have to work tomorrow, everyone would get it. It would be like, oh yeah, right. Go home, go to bed, sleep so that you could get up and go to work. But there it was like, really? You're telling us that you're not coming out because you have to go to work tomorrow? Like, yeah, we have to go to work tomorrow. Yeah, we'll figure that out. So I was like, okay, this is different. And so we went out and it was like late night, like not home till like 4 or 5. And now I don't recommend this, but it was like, home till like 4 or 5. And it was just kind of like, yeah, you're going to get 2 hours of sleep and then you're going to get up and then you're going to go do your work. And then, you'll look like a crazy person all day, but then you'll rest and sleep at the end of the day. But that year, it was just sort of like, we were not having a good time. We were not doing fun things that we wanted to do because of work. Work was not a good enough excuse to miss out on a great opportunity. And that's what happens when you're in another society or in another space where life is not oriented around work. Work is not the center, but community, family, friends, and being together is the center. And everything else sort of like has to fit in where it gets in around. And it will fit in. Just the same as here for us, what we do is like, we work as the center. And then it's like, okay, friendship, family, everyone else, get in where you fit in. In other places, it's not like that. And back home, it wasn't that. It was like, community is the center. Work, you'll get in where you fit in. And it works, but how you experience it. And my experience that year was just different. I experienced work differently. I experienced friendship and community differently because work was not the center. It was something that had to get in where it got in. And of course you will, because you got to pay your bills. You'll do it. You'll figure it out. But your whole identity doesn't have to be centered around that. And I think that that's thinking about what are the things that we're centering in our lives that are getting us, that are things that tend towards, that are about doing and perfectionism. And how do we decentralize those things so that they are more like get in where you fit in, and that our lives can really be centered around relationships, joy, community, the things that we really truly do love and value. So that was mind blowing for me and really shifted things and really has informed how I do Reframe to Create, and that reorienting people towards creating and putting ideas around productivity and like getting stuff done and dotting I's and T's to the periphery of our work experience as well.
I love that story. It is very fascinating how, different cultures, different countries have a completely different perspective about work and really, take things, like you said, like relationships and family, kind of takes precedence and priority. Yes, work is there. You always have to do it. It's always something that will get done, but it's still like just the recognizing, the part of just living and enjoying life and having a good time. And you're still doing the other things, but, really understanding, like putting that into perspective of what you want to do as far as your life and how you want your life to be with those things, with having relationships and friendships and things like that. And also the work part of it.
Yeah. And it's a subtle difference, but it's huge. It makes a huge, huge difference. And for those who might worry that, okay, that's all well and good, but, is my life going to fall apart? Will I not be successful? Or like, because that's still important to me. It's all well and good for you. You want to like skip around and have fun. And maybe that work wasn't important to you. But another time that I saw this demonstrated was even before this, right? So back again at college, I had a friend, we had exam week. And our freshman year, for some reason, one of these exam weeks, we decided that we were going to watch, I think we were doing this movie marathon. And so we rented, this was back in the time when you rented videos. So we rented like 10 to 15 VHS tapes from Blockbuster. Oh, Blockbuster, rest in peace. We rented all these videos, and it was like during our exam week, and we were like, oh, we want to watch all this stuff. So I remember we watched Mask of Zorro. We were just watching 3 or 4, back-to-back movies for so this was probably 6 hours straight of just like watching movies. And then we'd be like, okay, we gotta take a break to study for an hour, but meet back at 8 o'clock because we got this other movie that we gotta watch. And we would spend that hour was high intensity, really, really focused. I wasn't faffing around. I wasn't just complaining about what I needed to study. I was focused. I was getting stuff in. Because I had to go watch a movie in an hour. And then that's what we did that whole exam time. And really, we went into that exam period so relaxed, so chill. And I literally still to today, that was my best exam period. I got the best grades that I ever got in college from that exam period. And it just taught me that, yes, reorienting your life around the things that are most important, that are enjoyable, that are delightful, that energize you, that bring you joy, only helps everything else. Like this idea of like, no, you got to suffer, barrel through, you got to do the rough stuff, like that's what your life needs to be centered around. And then we'll have some fun. Then we'll throw in a little vacation time. Then we'll, and it's like it never happens. It just, whatever you focus on is what grows and expands. And it just ends up taking over your life. But if you center your life around health, family, friends, relationships, the things you want to create, those things grow and they expand and they yield and they bring forth all this other good stuff. And you will get in all the other things where you need to get in and will do even better in those, because your reorientation will just create a type of mood and open up your mind in a way that just makes life better and makes the things that you have to get done that you don't want to get done even easier and better. And so that was, we still talk about that. And we're like, oh yeah, I remember that freshman year. And, now we didn't repeat it because I think we kind of were like, okay, is this thing really going to work going forward? But it proved out that was the best exam year. So
that's very interesting. I love that whole idea of the focused time. Like, I don't know, maybe this is similar, like when you set a timeline for how long you have to get something done, or when you have a deadline that you're up against and you know that you have like the paper is due at 12:59 and it's 10 o'clock and you're just getting started. And it's something about that window of time. Like you just find that you do your best work. Your brain is like on steroids and you knock it out. We always get things done. Like at the end of the day,
yes,
we always get it done. So I love how you were able to come around to this through this example, and how this example showed that you were having fun. You were, setting priority for the things that you wanted to do. You had this window of study time and you committed to that study time, and it was so intense and it was so well spent study time. Cause sometimes study time, it could be study time, but it's like you're taking a break, you're going to get something to eat, you're coming back, you're checking your phone. So that study time is really just, it ends up being this longer period of time. So I love that story and how it kind of really puts into perspective of this really focused time and really bridging with the things that you want to do and the things that you would like to create.
Yeah. Yeah. And the key for that, it wasn't like, okay, we put focus time to do this task that we don't like because we got to go to this next task that we don't like after. And then this next. No, it was the whole life was all the things we wanted to do. It was fun. And it was just like, you've got this narrow window to knock out this thing that has to be done that you don't necessarily want to get to. And then it's back to fun because you have to stop. So you better make it work because we're moving on to our next movie after this. And it makes a difference. So now I still have that practice and that habit. In some sort of way, I have a daily delight that I sort of like have in my day, in my calendar. I always plan my fun first. I plan vacation first. I fill up my life with the brunches that I want to go to, the people I want to see, the things I want to create. That goes on first. And then it's like, okay, what are the other, the have to? And it's just like, whoa. I'm going to have to, there's less time to gripe and complain about those because we do spend a lot of time griping and complaining about the things that we have to do. But it's like, I don't even have time for that. It's just kind of like, oop, got to squeeze it in because we've got the nail appointment after. So like, make it snappy, get it done, get out the way and move on with your life. So there's a lot to be said for how your life is oriented, reorienting it and putting the things at the center and putting the things first that bring you the most joy that you most want, because I just think it works better that way. Everything else will get in and fit in.
And this is super, super helpful when it comes to like the perfectionism, which when we think about it, it really it creates procrastination.
Yeah.
It allows us to stay in our heads about it. It really is just like a loop that we stay in, but with this way of really reframing and reorienting ourselves and what we're thinking about, work and family relationships and putting all those things together is a different perspective, a new way of thinking about it in a way that really allows you to really create. Like you said, you create better, you create more when you are balancing in those things that you really like and you really enjoy with the other things that you have to get done, and not letting the things that you have to get done take the big priority and precedence over, living and having fun.
Yeah, exactly. Because it'll get done, but it doesn't have to take up all your headspace and all your energy and all that. And it will if you make it the center.
hmm So it sounds like, this strategy is something that, you've used in your life, and, you've really had great awareness and insight around it, just the stories that you shared. So tell us about your work, your Create framework, what this is all about, and how this helps with not just creating, but helps with things like, perfectionism and, taking action and those things.
So I am an executive and leadership and storytelling coach. I wasn't always this. This is my second career. And my journey to this point started in my previous work as a social justice and policy advocate. And I love that world of work. And, it was like, we were whippersnappers, we were doing things, we were, impacting the world. But I didn't enjoy the way that I personally was working within it. It just didn't quite hit all the points and marks for me, the roles that I was playing in these spaces. And so about 6 years ago, I quit that role and I went on this journey to sort of find myself, discover myself, to do what I hoped was find a way for me to get, figure out how I could get paid to be myself and really offer my gifts and my skills. And partway through this journey, I created this workshop. And it sort of came through a series of things and being encouraged by coaches to do these things. But I sort of like created this thing I brought out into the world. It was creative exercise. And then I realized that it was becoming a point of attraction for other opportunities. I was in a point of transition, but then I would talk about, I have this workshop that I created, and it would open up different conversations. It opened up opportunities for business partnership to go to different conferences. And all at a time when I was trying to figure things out. But this thing that I had created was opening doors. It was creating this laser focused direction for me. And looking back, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is it. Like, it wasn't about finding a title or finding the next role or being defined by a particular organization, but what I was creating and what I had created was opening doors for me. And so when I think about it and I reverse engineered it and I came up with the Create framework, which is a way to help people to reorient themselves in work, because the goal of it is to help people, regardless of whether they become entrepreneurs or are staying in their role, but to change how they're working so that they're people who are continuously creating, setting themselves apart in their work, creating their legacy, getting paid to be themselves. The key to that is creating. The key to that is the products, services, and experiences that you create. And so that's what I do with my clients and helping them to get oriented that way so that when they think about work, they're not thinking about, oh, my work is my job, my work is my career. It's like, no, it's not. Your work is all the things that you create. And you want to be creating because that's what's going to set you apart. That's what makes you incomparable. That's what people look at you and they're like, oh, who is this person? What do they bring to the table? It's like, oh, look what they created. They created this new project. This project wasn't here before. They created it. This is the owner of the project. Tell me more about this. And then your skills and your talents and all these things sort of come together in what you create. So everything about how I orient myself and I encourage my clients to orient themselves when it comes to work is around what will I create? Ask that question. Think about your work that way, not how can I be more productive? How can I dot this I? How can I dot this T? Oh, here's my to-do list. Here are the things that I need to go through. That doesn't make you stand apart because if you think about it, you could be in a role, it could be 2 or 3 of you guys in a similar role, and you guys are all just hammering things out, hashing things out, and being all productive. You're easily replaceable. They'll just like you're moving on to another job. Great. We'll plug someone else in. They can do this work, this role that we've defined. But when you go into a role and into a space and you create something new, now you're different. Now you're offering something that's unique and you're able to make a contribution that's unique to you and insert yourself into that role and in that space. And so it's obviously something that is, there's potential to feel very vulnerable in that and get trapped in some sort of like perfectionism of like, okay, well, what am I going to create? And like, how am I going to do this thing that's really stand out or whatever? And it's not about that. So within the framework, the steps of the framework are, it's a Create framework, and it stands for, the first step is clarifying your unique contribution, which is about getting clear about what it is that you offer that's unique. Then R is reframe your environment, all the things that you need to do within your environment to make creating easy. And then the central, very important pillar, expressing your gifts for yourself, which is a way to, I think, get over perfectionism, realizing that what you have to offer is important in and of itself. Like it always doesn't have to end up in something being monetized. It doesn't always have to end up in something flashy. It's small and it's important because you matter and just creating matters. And then A is activate your gifts for others. This is where you think about service. And then even with this, it doesn't have to be like a big crowd. This is not about becoming Oprah, but about offering it in service to at least one other person. And then T, tracking and, observing and getting feedback. And then E, sort of bringing it back together, evolve and grow and go beyond. And I think all these different pieces and elements, the point of them is doing things in small pieces, bite-sized pieces, and thinking about it as this is how I want to make a contribution and how I want to serve. So all of that, I think, helps us to get over our perfectionism, even as we're thinking, oh, I want to do something, I want to create, but is it going to be big? And it's like, no, it's not about that. It's like, is it going to be alive? Are you going to bring it forth? Is it going to be birth? So that's what I'm really excited about these days for myself and with other people as well.
I love it. It really is a completely different way of thinking about it. A really great way to put it into perspective when it comes to putting your unique gifts and contributions out in the world. And I love the E, express your gifts, because like you said, that's the part that, really ties into the perfectionism and your ability to be able to put your gifts out there and put them out there in a way where you're taking the action, the imperfect action, and allowing that to help you and support you when it comes to creating. And I know that has proved to be really helpful in my journey when I participated in your everyday challenge, which that was the theme of really doing something every single day, working towards a personal goal or professional goal, and watching what you could create just by committing to taking action every day. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not about, it being perfect. It's more so about on a consistent basis, you're just taking action, taking what you call the turtle steps daily, and how that always produces the results that you're looking for. And I made so much progress in those 30 days, and I signed up again for another 30 days, but I made so much progress just with that focus of taking the action. And, over time, I realized that I was procrastinating less, and I was not really letting the perfectionism stand in the way because I was committed to just getting things done by taking action daily. It wasn't like, I think I did like a personal goal and a professional goal. So sometimes the personal goal was just like, I want to work out a few days this week. And I had that as the goal. So I would do something towards it every day. And even on the professional side, like working towards business tasks and things like that. And that proved to be very helpful for me. So I know this framework is very powerful because it is a way to reorient, to rethink about, how you create and how you put your uniqueness out into the world.
Yeah. And the thing about turtle steps is about rejecting this notion of go big or go home. This idea that the only things that matter in this world are the big things and that are flashy. And that's why I told you guys, I'm like, it's turtle steps. It's like, remember the turtle wins the race at the end. And I was like, make the goal so small that you can just fall out of bed in the morning and then you've achieved your goal because it's so low to the ground. It's like even lower than your bed. Like you just rolled out. It's like, oh, I was going to pick up a paper today, or I was going to make a phone call. And it's like, it's done and it's yay. And you clap for yourself and you move on from there because that builds momentum and that builds that excitement and support for you. And that's what helps you to just keep moving forward and just not get all hung up in perfectionism and like you said, leads us to procrastinate because we've made this thing so big in our minds. That's what's tripping us up. And so it makes it hard to commit, which is something else that we need if we're going to keep going forward, if we're going to keep creating, if we're going to keep showing up in the world, we have to commit. And committing to big, flashy things can be really hard. Sometimes it's hard to be consistent with that, but you can commit to a small thing and then a small thing tomorrow and then another small thing. And so I'm a fan for keeping things really small to help that commitment.
Absolutely. And it works because you've also created a new podcast, Reframe to Create. Tell us about your new podcast and what that's about.
Yes, I'm so excited. So Reframe to Create is for professionals and experienced professionals. And it's my other way of offering my gifts and service to this community to help folks go on this journey of reframing our thinking and about how we think about work, away from thinking of that our work is our job or our career and that we have to fit into this particular script or role, to an understanding that our work is not our job or career. Our work is what we create, and that what we create is what is going to be our legacy. And so we want to then orient ourselves away from thinking, how can I be more productive in this role? How can I fit this role? To always asking ourselves, what will I create? And how is that going to help me create a product, a service, or experiences I'm going to offer in service to the world? That's what's going to open different doors for you. And maybe you'll stay in your current role. Maybe you'll develop a side hustle and go out and be an entrepreneur. Maybe you'll do both. It doesn't matter. The venue to me and the platform is I'm platform agnostic. And I think people get hung up on that. It's not about that. It's about what are you doing and are you creating? And so that's what the podcast is about, taking folks on through the journey, taking us through the framework, taking folks through my journey and their journey and where we're going to end up. And then I'll have reframes, I'll have tips, I'll have stories, I'll have interviews. You're one of my guests on one of the episodes so that we sort of like go through and then people can like learn how they can start to work in this new way and experience real joy and fulfillment in all that they do, get paid to be themselves and just show up and work in a completely different way. So I'm excited about it. And I had to go through a few perfection attacks myself to to finally launch it. But I'm glad that I'm did. It's getting good stuff. But I learned a lot. I learned some key things in those couple of weeks leading up to the launch. One, it's important not to compare yourself to other folks, and it's hard. And because our eyes are designed to compare, because as soon as you look, you're going to compare. So I know a lot of times people say, oh, don't compare, don't compare. Well, how do you do that? Well, don't look. Like sometimes you have to put blinders on. You got to get off social media. You've got to stop being in the line of people's constant life updates. If you're getting ready to create and do something in the world, you have to like get away from that comparison. And then you have to commit to small things. Just be like, okay, I'm going to commit. I'm just going to keep moving forward. And then having the courage to suck. That's the other thing. I was just like, I had to just sort of accept it because I was like, oh, it's going to be good. Are people going to like it? And then I had to get to a moment of being like, even if it is not perfect, even if I listen to those first episodes and I'm like, this is a piece of trash, I'm going to have the courage to suck, the courage to have days of small beginnings, the courage to grow and be at a point where I look back and I think, oh, this wasn't as good. I'm going to have the courage to sit in that and just have compassion on myself for all my different stages. And once I sort of like processed through those steps mentally for myself, I was like, okay, push publish. Let's go. Let's do it. Let's get out there in the world and let's serve other people. Let's get over ourselves. And let me offer this, to like hopefully one person will benefit from it. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. I love all of it. It's a process. It's a journey and it's a beautiful journey. Like you can look back and, maybe a year from now, you'll look back on these episodes and like, you have some different thoughts about them, but you'll be able to see the growth. You'll be able to see how much you've learned in the process and you'll be able to look back and say, wow, okay, I did that. That was something that I was able to create in spite of all of the challenges that come up along the way. But I was able to create it. Yeah. And it's good because I listened to it and I love your storytelling. I love the episodes and it's good stuff. It's really good stuff.
Yeah. I've actually listened back already. I'm like, oh, why were you tripping? And I knew it was happening in the moment that it was happening. So I had to talk myself off the ledge. But it's good to see that we really can and do get in our way sometimes when we are more focused on, I think it's when we get stuck on ourselves, how we're perceived. Because I was going crazy because I was over focused on the sound of my voice. And I said, oh, you sound like a robot. You don't sound normal and natural. It's like, okay, well, maybe I don't sound like my normal self because I'm literally talking to a computer. It's like chill. It's like, it's okay. Like you'll get into it and get into the rhythm. And so I was judging myself, but I was not thinking about what the content of what I was saying and being of service. And so I think it all comes back to that, to realizing that our perfectionism is not this benign thing, often an ego-driven, vain thing. And it's all about ourselves and how we're being perceived and how we want to control how other people see us. And if we can get out of that and think, okay, it's about other people and how can I be of service to other people? Let me change, again, reorient myself, reframe how I'm looking at this. I think that helps us as well. And so once I started getting feedback from folks and then it was about them and I was listening to like, well, what did you get out of it? And I was trying to be, how can I be of service? I got over myself. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is vanity.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's always a thing, but it's so challenging in the moment. But like you said, it's real. It's really real when you start to critique like every little part and piece of it. And you recognize that like, oh, am I really concerned about my voice? Am I really concerned about like those things and not really focusing on the message and the value of what you're doing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah, this has been great. I'll be sure to put all of those links in the show notes. I really enjoyed this conversation. You provided some wonderful stories, some great insights, and I think a way to really challenge ourselves, because it's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of thinking. It's different from what we may have heard. It's different from what we're used to in the workplace. And even as entrepreneurs, and even, just the whole part of really thinking about our lives and integration of the many different parts of our lives and how we want to, what do we want to be important and what do we want to have priority as we look to really live our lives.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to hearing what your folks create.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. That was such a wonderful conversation with Joy Spencer. She really gave us a lot to think about when it comes to working through perfectionism and creating. I love the stories that she shared from her own journey, as well as the strategies that she uses in her work to support her clients. Things like not comparing ourselves to others, shifting our focus from self to service, and moving from vanity and ego to the value that our gifts and contributions will bring. She also talked about the importance of small, consistent steps over time to make progress. Joy offered us a reframe for productivity and a new perspective on how to integrate work, relationships, and family into our lives more intentionally. I hope that you're reflecting on these strategies and how you can use them to work through perfectionism in your life. Remember, the goal is to create, to provide your unique gifts and contributions to the world, which is why you can't let things like perfectionism cause you to procrastinate, get stuck, and ultimately keep you from creating. People need your brilliance. Be sure to connect with Joy and check out her new podcast, Reframe to Create. The links are included in the show notes. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to leave a rating and a review. Also, help me spread the word by sharing the podcast with someone that you know who could use the support and empowerment. Until next time.